How many folks out there before getting the invite today had heard of the Kansas Infrastructure Hub? Oh, good. Great. We're doing our job. How about the Build Kansas Fund? And I know we haven't really gotten into that. Okay, good. So we've got some base knowledge. Will just be a little bit of a refresher course for some folks and a little bit more introduction. So the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, it's also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the IIJA. It's a national investment of $1.2 million across 5 years. And it's in two different pots. Formula funding that comes to the states, that's a set amount per state, and that's about 60% of the pot of funding. And then 40% of it is discretionary, and that's the grant dollars that we're going after by writing these grants to bring them in. And that's really our focus as the hub and our focus here today. The infrastructure hub agencies that are involved, it's really an unprecedented collaborative effort here to get all these agencies together. You'd think all the agencies are always talking, and they are, but to get all 8 in a room every 2 weeks is a great kind of side effect of bringing the hub together. But some of these you might wonder, why are they involved? So Department of Agriculture, well, that encompasses the Division of Water Resources. Department of Commerce has broadband under its purview. Of course, Health and Environment is water and air quality. Transportation is self-evident. Corporation Commission for Energy. And then Emergency Management is our resilience sector, and Office of Information Technology Services is our cybersecurity sector. And these are also the agencies that make up and receive the bulk of the formula funding through the federal government. So as I said, we have a steering committee approach. They meet every 2 weeks, representatives of all the agencies. It's all these infrastructure sectors that I already touched on. And then we're really providing, previously and often in the day-to-day work, the folks that are working in these agencies can be very siloed. This is an opportunity to get together and share best practices, share ideas for collaborative projects, regional projects that can be undertaken with the work of multiple agencies. And really, it's important to note that Kansas is really at the forefront of this effort. We're one of the few states that have done both sides of the equation, both put together a matching fund and technical assistance hub that we'll get into more detail here in a second. And a lot of the other states are really only transportation only, so to see this across all the sectors is great as well. So two-pronged approach for the hub. Technical assistance, the legislature set aside $15 million over 3 years for that technical assistance to help with the grant writing, and then $200 million in match support. And this is really a one-time investment that's been made in response to the bipartisan infrastructure law, but there's already been conversations, discussions amongst the lawmakers of how important this has been. Also should be noted that the governor is very invested in this, and her office has been very involved in the establishment and workings of the hub. So first, starting with the technical assistance, and I sort of misspoke earlier. We don't do the grant writing. We do the grant assistance, identification, research, helping develop the outlines of the grants, but really rely on the grant recipients to do the writing themselves or work with the consultants like others in the room today. So technical assistance, we have a team. Matt Hansen, who introduced himself, Shannon, who's at the back of the room, are members of our capacity extension team. They help do our technical assistance work. So identifying those grant programs as they open, knowing which ones are coming down the pipe, kind of looking to the past to inform the future, knowing what's already been gone through, what the normal cadence of those grant programs are, because as you know, sometimes when the NOFOs come out, you only have a month or two to respond to that. You really want to be prepared in advance of that. And then just that concept development of what grant proposals are being put together. So we have both in-house staff, and is Jessica at the back of the room yet? You all met her as she was, as you were checking in today, Jessica Pierce on our team. Matt and I are our in-house staff, and then we have our consultants, Witt O'Brien's, who are very much part of the team we work with on a daily basis to provide this support. So we do a lot of events around the state, attend a lot of conferences. That's why Matt and Shannon are here with us today. They're doing a lot of water consults around the state. I was at the Emergency Managers Association last week. Jessica's at the Economic Development Agency conference this next Monday. So we're getting the word out, and that's maybe how a lot of you have heard of us before. Doing a lot of events, a lot of conference workshops. And getting out, just kind of pounding the pavement and letting folks know we're here. So really, we're also really tasked with spreading the wealth around the state. As you might imagine, since the legislature was involved in setting this up, they want to see that we're not just touching the usual suspects, but getting out to all corners of the state. And I'll get into a little bit more of that a little bit later, but this is just our technical assistance by district. So really a really healthy, a lot of times, in other programs you'll see southwest northwest part of the state can be a little underserved. We're actually doing really well there, south central as well. So getting that spread across the state. Far northeast is a little bit smaller and a little harder but we have done some work there as well. So helping with grant research, grant identification, project alignment, application support, and then also assisting post-award support. Folks, of course, have a lot of trepidation about the pre-award, writing that grant proposal. They feel like maybe they don't have the expertise. Part of that in the back of their mind is also a lot of times, well, what do I do when I get this grant or if I get this grant? So helping them set up the policies and procedures and the operating procedures to deal with the grant once it's awarded. So that match support, that's the $200 million that the legislature set aside and that the governor signed. It's $200 million over 4 years from 2024 to 2027. And then I promised I'd get back to this. One of the things we've been tasked with by the legislature is investing $10 million in each of the economic development districts. So that's here. And usually we kind of skip over this pretty quickly. It's a little hard to read. It'll be in the recording. But the workflow of proceeding through, and we have a kind of, the next slide is the two-tier workflow. But really when the application comes into, and our technical assistance team is around to help with the pre-application, getting everything in order for the application. When it comes in, we do a completeness review. It's not like a federal grant process. It's not just one and done. You don't just turn it in and then that's your last chance. We will work with you to refine it if there's things that need to be corrected in it. Then it moves to our, let's see if I can get this to work, to our steering committee. This is, again, the 8 agencies that meet every 2 weeks to advise on that, or to review and approve those applications. Then it moves to our advisory committee, and this is, again, where the legislature is very involved. We just had our monthly meeting yesterday. They meet every third Wednesday of the month, typically. And this is a committee of legislators from all over the state that's put together that advises on these applications. Then once we get that advice, we either move it on to we move it onto the state treasurer's office, and it goes back. And let me look at my notes, make sure I'm covering everything. And then after that, if it's awarded, if the federal grant is awarded, then we work with the state treasurer's office to reimburse those funds. So this is the kind of 2-track process I alluded to on the last slide. And really what we need to have happen is that folks apply to the Build Kansas Fund for those matching dollars at the same time they're preparing their federal application. Now, we don't require a complete federal application for our consideration. It can be a draft narrative. We do need to have something in the way of a budget, but it doesn't have to be a final budget, but something that we can send forward to the steering committee and advisory committee for their approval and recommendation. But the one hard and fast rule is that we absolutely must receive the Build Kansas Fund application before the federal due date. And we really like to receive it the first of the month the first Friday of the month before the application's due. That gives us enough time to work through the steering committee and advisory committee process to get a letter in hand, because we know it's really helpful for those grant applications to have that letter of intent to have this funding available to the project. And then this is that kind of schedule. Again, we just met yesterday. with the advisory committee. We have steering committee meetings every 2 weeks. We are going to be going to a little bit of a different cadence in the new year, where we meet on either side of the advisory committee, just so it's a little bit more regular, so we get 2 meetings in every month. And again, this first Friday of every month is like our kind of priority deadline for getting those applications reviewed and approved by the committees in time. One new thing as of July that we heard back from the Legislative Advisory Committee that they really wanted to see is some skin in the game from the local applicants that are applying for these funds. And so there's now a cost share expectation on the part of the local applicants for a portion of that non-federal match requirement. It can be either cash or in kind, and the goal is to demonstrate that applicant's commitment to the project. And it just needs to be significant in some way. And for a local public entity, a rough guideline that we have is 5% of the non-federal match. So just as an example, if it's $1 million grant application and there's a 20% required federal match, that's $200,000. And then 5% of that would be $10,000. So, a significant amount, but not, hopefully not overwhelming for those local communities. And I will say we do provide some exclusions for that or allow for some justification. So if entities are not able to meet that local cost share, say they're a town of 500 and their budget is just very tight and that money needs to be spent elsewhere, there's the opportunity in the application to write that justification. Also, for regional projects, we want to incentivize those and realize that would be otherwise complicated or difficult to divide up those cost share. That can be excluded on a case-by-case basis as well. Finally, and I was going to say it earlier, but I held off, just the hub is not, our job is not to select these projects. We know they're going through the federal process on their own. That's who's going to select what projects move forward or not. We're really there to determine if the Build Kansas Fund funding is a match for this, for the project, and make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed for those federal grants. And it's additive only. There's no requirement if somebody's going after bipartisan infrastructure law funds, a grant program under the BIL. They don't have to come to us. They don't have to seek our technical assistance. They don't have to seek grant or cost share funds. They can apply on their own. It's just meant to be an additive program. Finally, just a little bit by the numbers, project numbers. We approved 7, or the advisory committee approved 7 more yesterday, so we're up to 65 total approved projects for Build Kansas funds. Awaiting announcements, still 45, as a lot of you know. We're out there, just once you get them in, you're just waiting. But we have really great kind of success rate so far, 60%, so 12 awarded. 8 were notified they weren't awarded, but 60% success rate is really great to see. In terms of the financial numbers, I mentioned we have the $200 million total pool. The advisory committee and steering committee have approved funds up to $95,000. Now we already know, so the restored category here is those that were notified that they weren't awarded funds. So those funds will be put back into the Build Kansas Fund to be made available to others. We have, for those that have been awarded, we have committed $23 million, just over $23 million, and then we're awaiting notice on about $40 million. So return on investment, with that commitment and with the federal funds awarded, we're currently at 137%. We see that going up quite a bit in the future. One of our projects was a 50-50 match, and it was a big project, $20 million, so it took a lot of match funds to go into that. But then we've had other great projects, smaller projects. Our first 2 were in Ozaki, and it's a town of, I think, 500-600. Great to see them be successful in that. But you'll see, again, they're really spread across the state. Edgerton just got awarded their Safe Streets for All. Ellsworth, an airport infrastructure grant. Those were our 2 most recent grants. Dodge City Water Smart, that was the bigger grant for the Ogallala Aquifer recharge. But again, communities all over the place, as well as groundwater management district. Ellsworth was actually the airport authority that received that grant. So, as long as you're an eligible applicant for the federal grant, you're eligible for the Build Kansas funds.